Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2020's Opening Doors to Justice. I'm Cindy Myers, Interim CEO of OneJustice. We're incredibly grateful to you for joining us for our virtual event today and hope that you and yours are staying healthy and safe during this very difficult time. We're sorry we can't be with you in person enjoying the Ritz-Carlton tonight, but we're excited to present our special guests, honorees, and have some fun. And given the importance of our mission at this particular moment in time, we will ask you to begin or continue your support of OneJustice.
Thank you, Cindy. Hello, everyone. I'm Keely O, Board Chair of OneJustice. It's been a difficult few months. Your support tonight means that low-income Californians who face pressing problems without access to legal services can find the assistance they desperately need. Your donations will enable OneJustice to continue its important work, and those services are needed now more than ever.
Tonight, we'll present our Champions of Justice Awards to PayPal and Morgan Lewis and Bacchius LLP. We're also excited to recognize our former CEO through the Julia R. Wilson Legacy Fund. And I know we're all looking forward to hearing Justice Terry Jackson's keynote address, as well as a Q&A facilitated by one of our Strategy Council members and the host of Modern Lawyer podcast, Anand Upadhyay.
Yes, and one of the most important parts of our program, our Fund a Need appeal, will be hosted by our Director Pro Bono Justice, Sharon Bashan, and our wonderful auctioneer, Michael Tate. And don't forget to enter our wine poll. Everyone who donates at any level tonight will be eligible to win 2 tickets on United Airlines to anywhere in the U.S.
Fantastic. I invite you to contribute at any point during our program by texting ODJ 2020 to 41444. Let's get this thing started.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lydia Sinkus, and I'm an Equal Justice Works Fellow at OneJustice. I'm really excited that we're honoring PayPal today because, along with the law firm of Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, PayPal sponsors my Equal Justice Works Fellowship. My fellowship focuses on expanding access to legal services for non-citizen immigrants who've been impacted in some way by the criminal legal system. What does this look like in practice? Well, I can tell you about a current case that we have going with a stellar pro bono attorney from Orrick, Amanda Maya. Amanda is working with a client who came to our immigrant post-conviction relief clinic in Stockton because she wanted to become a U.S. citizen, but she knew that she had some sort of prior criminal record or criminal incident in her history. We had a team of attorneys from PayPal and Orrick at the clinic screening clients, and through their screening of this client, we found that she did have one misdemeanor conviction on her record from 1988, and this conviction turned out to be quite a problem for her. It turns out that on the basis of this one conviction, if she were to have gone ahead and applied to become a U.S. citizen, she would have been at risk of losing her permanent resident status and even being deported. Amanda is now working with the client to defend her constitutional right to have been advised of these immigration consequences when she pled to this offense way back in 1988. Success on this post-conviction relief motion will mean that the client can stay safely in the U.S. with her family and can eventually achieve her goal of becoming a U.S. citizen. This is just one example of the over 25 clients that we've served through our clinic in the past year, and access to these services is incredibly helpful as this type of screening and representation can be both expensive and really hard to find. I'd like to thank PayPal, Orrick, OneJustice, and all of our other partners for making this really incredibly supportive and impactful work possible. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Chilam-Tirana, and I'm on the board of directors of OneJustice. This event is OneJustice's primary fundraising moment for the year, and we are so grateful to all of the sponsors and donors who have already committed to date. Your contributions mean that people facing legal barriers to necessities like housing, medical care, freedom from violence, and even food or clean water will receive the help that they need. Your support directly advances the impact of our state's civil justice system, and I thank you. For over 40 years, OneJustice has helped transform the civil legal aid system to provide help to those who need it most. Even during this pandemic, we are fighting for a justice system that achieves the promise of equal justice under the law.
I am proud to support OneJustice's mission of providing critical legal aid to California's underserved. This mission is more important today than ever. Please join me in supporting OneJustice.
I've proudly supported OneJustice for more than 20 years because they are experts in developing and leveraging new ideas to increase access to justice across the state.
Hello, my name is Juan Ortiz, and I am a staff attorney and program director with the Immigration Institute of the Bay Area. It has been my pleasure to collaborate with OneJustice since 2013 via dozens of legal clinics. OneJustice has greatly helped expand IIBA's capacity to serve immigrants in and around underserved Contra Costa County. Not surprisingly, since our partnership began soon after implementation of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, the majority of our collaborative efforts have centered on assisting dreamers apply for and renew DACA. Our work together over the years has also helped IIBA increase its capacity to administer legal consultations and assist with citizenship applications. I want to extend a sincere thank you to all the OneJustice staff and volunteers, past and present, whose work has fundamentally helped IIBA's mission to serve immigrants.
I support OneJustice because they help to give a voice for people in the justice system that don't always have one.
We've supported OneJustice for more than a decade because we believe OneJustice brings life-changing legal services to those in need.
Thank you for supporting OneJustice along with us.
Our first award tonight goes to PayPal. PayPal has been an incredible supporter of OneJustice, including co-sponsoring our Equal Justice Works fellow Lydia Sinkus and their participation on the Justice Bus over the years. Their commitment to pro bono work is exemplary. To accept the award on behalf of PayPal, please welcome Vice President of Legal, Ben Adams.
My name is Ben Adams. I'm with PayPal, and in addition to being a vice president in the legal team, I also lead our global pro bono initiatives. We are honored to be one of OneJustice's 2020 Champions of Justice. As far as PayPal's commitment to pro bono service, it is core to our mission. A few years ago, we actually institutionalized the 12-hour expectation of everyone in our legal department. We've taken a fairly liberal interpretation to service, and that includes both, pro bono and community service. But what's most important is that, we really build a culture of people giving back in ways that are meaningful to them. We've created a structure where every office in the world where we have 2 or more lawyers has a pro bono representative, a pro bono lead. They're responsible for sourcing opportunities, working with law firms, working with local legal aid clinics, creating locally relevant opportunities so that we can give back. In 2019, we gave about 2,200 hours. Probably half of those were pro bono, and really found a variety of different ways, everything from beach cleanup, removing invasive species from fields in Nebraska, to leading the name and gender clinic or a OneJustice trip to address immigration issues. Another is that we've been able to partner with a law firm to support OneJustice was with ORIC in relation to an Equal Justice Works fellow, Lydia Sinkus, who's been working with OneJustice for the last 18 months or so, and working to help address some of the unique needs of immigrants with criminal backgrounds. PayPal's service commitment is really a natural extension of our core business mission, right? We're out to democratize financial services and empower businesses and people of all backgrounds and economic status to basically, really join in and thrive in the global economy. We also believe in the need to engage across our entire stakeholder base and really support that entire community of employees, customers, in the communities where we run our business and where we offer our services. To that end, OneJustice continues to be an amazing partner, someone we're proud to be associated with, and continue to look for opportunities to do more together. Thank you.
Our next award goes to Morgan Lewis and Bacchius. We're grateful to have the support of Morgan Lewis. They're a strong supporter of our Justice Bus program, having participated in one of the farthest Justice Bus trips ever, from the Bay Area to just north of Bakersfield. Morgan Lewis was also one of the founding law firms for the Bay Area Rural Justice Collaborative, and Morgan Lewis partner Rahul Kapoor is our wonderful colleague on the OneJustice board. To accept the award on behalf of Morgan Lewis and Bacchius, please welcome firm chair Jamie McKeon.
Hi, I'm Jamie McKeon, the chair of Morgan Lewis. We're so honored to accept this award from OneJustice, one of our closest pro bono partners. Morgan Lewis has valued the opportunity to collaborate with OneJustice for more than a decade to support its mission of bringing life-changing legal help to those in need by transforming the legal aid system. Over the past few years alone, we've had opportunities to volunteer with dozens of innovative OneJustice-led projects, including the Justice Bus, the Rural Justice Collaborative, and most recently, the Justice Plane, all bringing vitally important legal services to isolated and underserved parts of California. We've often engaged in this work with collaboration with firm clients, such as Google and Gap, who share our commitment to access to justice. These clinics have brought life-changing help to veterans, dreamers, and to individuals needing assistance with criminal records, creating barriers to employment and education. We also work regularly with Impact LA, a project to support survivors of domestic violence by providing wraparound legal services in a clinic setting. We appreciate the wonderful work of OneJustice, which is even more important now during these difficult times, and we look forward to our continued partnership to support the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you again.
It is my great honor to introduce our next speaker and announce the Julia R. Wilson Legacy Fund. This fund was created in honor of Julia's 15 years as OneJustice's CEO. The fund is dedicated to increasing support for executive directors and other leaders of legal aid organizations as they prepare for the great challenges ahead. During Julia's tenure at OneJustice, she systematically changed the legal aid sector landscape. Among her many accomplishments include co-funding the Executive Fellows Program, starting the annual Pro Bono Conference, creating the award-winning Justice Bus and Justice Plane projects, which connected legal aid nonprofits with pro bono volunteers, and developing numerous cohort-based learning programs that provide essential nonprofit management tools for the legal aid community. Julia inspires her peers to be great leaders and real change makers. Her impact will be felt far into the future. The Julia R. Wilson Legacy Fund will ensure that OneJustice is positioned to lead the legal aid and pro bono community and provides us with a way to honor our longtime leader for her amazing contributions. Please welcome Julia Wilson.
Thank you, Keely, for that very kind and honestly a bit overwhelming introduction. Congratulations to everyone at Morgan Lewis and PayPal. And thank you so much to the board and staff of OneJustice for letting me be a part of this evening. I've been thinking a lot about having a legacy fund out there in the world. And first of all, I'm so honored and truly deeply moved. And also, maybe this is a little bit dark, but I'm also really stoked that I'm not dead. And I get to be here to appreciate it. And there is something focusing about it. I mean, there's kind of a weight or a heft, I guess, to the idea of having a legacy. So I've been finding myself trying to make sense of it this week and asking myself, what is the essence of this for me? And this really clear answer has just floated up, that the essence for me is absolutely about community, and very specifically about the community of legal aid leaders in the state of California, and even more granularly about the very specific individuals who make up that community and have truly been at the very center of my work and honestly my heart for 15 years. I started my time at OneJustice and what was then also the Legal Aid Association of California by traveling all over the state and meeting one-on-one with almost all of the just over 100 executive directors of legal aid nonprofits. And that early experience was so transformative for me. I mean, I walked away just knowing in my bones that these people are amazing, strategic, and holding bold vision and so much passion and care for the mission of their organizations and their staff and the communities that they serve. Brilliant. I mean, the smartest attorneys and advocates. and people who care deeply about justice, and not justice as some theoretical concept, but as USF law professor and mindfulness and anti-racism teacher and expert Rhonda McGee says, justice as love in action for the alleviation of suffering. And love in action for the alleviation of suffering. So reflecting now on impact and legacy, I would actually flip what Keely said. Every project that Keely mentioned in her introduction was the result of OneJustice's deep and meaningful relationships with that community of leaders. The OneJustice staff team and I were able to listen deeply to the needs, reflections, perspectives, and visions of those remarkable people, and then work together with them to take those collective ideas and turn them into reality. So my experience on my end was that these leaders, people who I was so grateful to have called my peers and my colleagues and my co-conspirators, and honestly, whose names are etched forever somewhere on my heart, they inspired me through their leadership and vision, and more so than ever before in the recent months of their responses to this year's challenges. And from that source of inspiration, I was called into working side by side with them to create change for our organizations, for our sector, and for this movement. For me, having the opportunity to work with them and to serve them was electrifying. And that electricity, it never stopped. Not for one day. And instead it sort of settled into this humming current of energy that I was able to plug into every single day. And I know that OneJustice will continue to amplify and be guided by that energy far, far into the future. So to everyone at OneJustice, everyone who made this fund possible, thank you. And most of all, to those legal aid leaders who make up the OneJustice Network, thank you, thank you, thank you for who you are and how you walk in this world. I love you.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, Julie. I wasn't planning
So great
on
to see you. Thank you for sharing those wonderful words. And speaking of community, isn't it amazing that while we're each in our own homes, we are together as a community behind OneJustice tonight?
Oh, I love that, Keely, and I so agree. And I think for me, it's just more proof of concept that this OneJustice network and community is enduring. And that is what brings me so much hope when I think of the response to the many challenges that we're facing.
Definitely. And for folks at home, we hope you'll join us in recognizing Julia's amazing achievements by texting ODJ 2020 to 41444 and selecting the Julia R. Wilson Legacy Fund. Thank you.
It's an honor for me to introduce tonight's keynote, Justice Terry Jackson. I'm also delighted to engage Justice Jackson in a brief conversation after her honors talk tonight. Feel free to use the chat function in Zoom to ask any questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can in the time that we have allotted. So let me get on to the introduction of her honor. Justice Terry Jackson is an Associate Justice of the California Court of Appeal, First Appellate District. In that role, she's the first African-American woman to be appointed to that court. Before that, Justice Jackson was the first African-American woman to serve as a Superior Court judge in San Francisco. In 2008, she was selected by the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court to sit in Riverside County on a special criminal backlog reduction task force. That task force resolved more than 1,000 backlog criminal cases in 1 year. Prior to that, Justice Jackson was at the esteemed firm Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, where she focused on complex commercial litigation. For over 14 years, she worked as a prosecutor for the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, serving as the managing director for homicide and domestic violence. Now, those are all things that you might normally hear in an introduction of a keynote, but that's not the main reason I leapt at the opportunity to introduce and have a Q&A with Justice Jackson. The main reason is, as a young attorney many years ago, I had the opportunity to appear before Justice Jackson, then Judge Jackson, in the Superior Court of San Francisco, and I witnessed Justice Jackson, then Judge Jackson, diffuse an extremely tense situation. Plaintiff's counsel versus defense counsel in a very intense discovery dispute. Plaintiff's counsel was yelling. Defense counsel returned fire with yelling. It was a moment that appeared to be intractable, so tense, no one knew what would happen. It was the first time that I'd seen then Judge Jackson in action. And what I observed there that day was Her Honor simply look up and look at each attorney and look them right in their eyes and say, "I hear you." And she turned to the other attorney and said, "I hear you." And it was this odd moment of empathy and kindness and humanity in this very aggressive situation. And when we all walked out of the hearing, we were marveling at how Her Honor took this very, very tense situation and calmed it down. It was, to me, the example of what a judge can do in a court when things start to go off the rails. So with that introduction and that personal story, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight, Justice Terry Jackson.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that very gracious introduction. And I was so frightened when you were going to say that I thought I might have used an expletive, but thank God I didn't. So I'm glad I was able to meet you for that time and hopefully resolve the matter. I want to thank OneJustice. When I look at your list of keynote speakers, the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, the granddaughter of Cesar Chavez, I feel so honored that you would allow me. I don't like the word keynote as much as I like saying a talk. And I hope that you can ask questions and hopefully I'll be able to answer them. I will do a caveat on, because I am honest, but for when it comes to my age and my weight. So those are the two topics I will not discuss. But today's talk, if you will allow me, last week, how I came up with this topic, last Friday, my former firm hosted a talk with Soledad O'Brien, who is a marvel in her own right. And it was in honor of Juneteenth, which we could talk about Juneteenth. And I just, in this eight minutes, I want to focus on one thing. And she was talking about the injustice and all the documentaries that she had done showing the injustice and how people are treated unfairly just because of the color of their skin or the neighborhood they lived in. And it was marvelous. It was a 1-hour talk, 1,500 participants. And I took away a lot of things, but she said something in passing. And she said in one of her responses to a question that was posed to her, she said, well, the Constitution is broken. And of course, now, please, I took away a lot of things, but that one just resonated with me because I had just administered the oath to a young person who is being admitted to the bar. And for all of those who are attorneys or any type of, if you have any type of license in the state of California at least, you have to swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the California Constitution. We can get into a debate. It's broke, or is it broken, or is it misapplied? I tend to think the following, because when you look at that document, and I can see why she said it's broken, because before we even look at the document, look at who wrote that magnificent document. The majority of the people, if not all, were all slave owners. But their quest was they wanted to be treated fairly. They wanted to have the separation of church and state and the three branches of government. They wanted to make sure that if you happen to be a farmer or a person who was born into a wealthy family, but you're a white male and white, you wanted to be treated fairly. The document was designed for them, but it is a great and magnificent document. And I remember when I was in law school, they said our Constitution is a living document. That meant it's not entrenched as when the people wrote it, because if that were the case, I wouldn't be sitting here. It's a document that has not been applied appropriately. It has not been applied fairly. It's a document that it's been misused. But if it's truly, as Martin Luther King once said to American people, be true to what you put on paper. All men, women, people of color, we are created equal. So if I had an opportunity to speak to Ms. O'Brien, I would say it's not broken, it's just not applied correctly. But I understand why you say it's broken. Because when you look at the injustices that have taken place, where people do not feel that the system works for them, they feel it's broken. And that's why OneJustice and other organizations are so vital, because we need to go back and make sure it is applied fairly. You know, I think of Langston Hughes and the dream deferred. And what happens to a dream deferred? And I put our Constitution, our US Constitution, in that same vein as Langston Hughes, where Langston Hughes said, if a dream is deferred, it's going to fester like a sore. If we do not apply our Constitution, both our state and US Constitution, fairly, it's a festering sore. And that is where our dialogue comes in, and why we need to talk about this, and why we have so many amendments. And when we look at just recently how the Supreme Court interpreted Title VII to say it applies to everyone, that's what we're talking about. And that is what you, this organization, and my responsibility is not to let our dream, let our Constitution be deferred. It's not a sore. It needs to be applied, and it needs to be applied fairly. So what do? You know, during this time, people have come to me, Terry, what's the answer here? What's the answer? I don't have the answers. We all need to work together. And that is even our legal system. It's not a legal system designed for just judges. It's not a legal system just designed for lawyers. It's a legal system that is our legal system. And we have to look at it. We have to reevaluate it, because we cannot continue as business as usual. And that's what I say about our Constitution. It's not business as usual, because that same Constitution, in the interpretation, in its application, before Brown versus Board of Education, there was a case called the Plessy decision that said separate, but you can have it separate, but it's equal. There's no such thing. Years later, Brown versus Board of Education, the reason why I'm here, separate is not equal. That's called the application. It's about holding true to what Dr. Martin Luther King said. Be true to what you say, that we're all created equal, and it shall be applied that way. And that is why during this time, it's okay to look at our system, our legal system, not just judges, but all of us, to see what can we do to tweak it or even redo it, to make sure that it's being applied to all people, that they feel that when they come into a courtroom, that courtroom is not about me or about the attorneys, but it's about them, that they can be heard. I may disagree, I may rule against you, but you've been heard, and you had a right to be heard, and you had a right for me to listen and apply. So I look at this as an exciting time, that it's now about application. You know, I often use this analogy. Years ago, I was honored by the Bar Association as breaking the glass ceiling. And I have the portrait up in my chambers. And I've been thinking about that. And I don't want it to be misinterpreted. I'm not here to talk about defunding an organization or the police department or anything like that. But I remember thinking, or I am now thinking, why is it that I want to break the glass ceiling of a building that oppressed me, that discriminated against me because I'm a woman, because of my color? Why do I want to break the glass ceiling of a building that has homophobia and xenophobia, all these things? Why do I want to break the glass ceiling of a building that is unjust? I like to kind of put it in a tech situation where we put it over on a campus so that this building is put aside. It's not going to be a revolution to redo a building because we have the foundation. The foundation is our Constitution. That Constitution guarantees all of us to be equal. And that I have a vision of a building someday with no ceilings, because ceilings mean limitations. I have a building like that song, I'm Happy, like a room without a roof. That's the type of building I want. And the building is going to be so long and so wide that the table will have all of us, people who look like me, who look like you, who have different views than I do, but we're all sitting at that table. And our foundation to build this building is our Constitution. Thank you.
Your Honor, I really, really appreciate it. At this point, I'd encourage the OneJustice ODJ audience to chat in any questions. I certainly have several, so let me kind of kick this off and open the floor to any participant who wants to ask a question. But you mentioned in your talk, I'll use your words, Your Honor, your talk, that it is incumbent on all of us to reevaluate how we apply this living document, the Constitution. As an appellate justice in California, how do you go about reevaluating it and applying that reevaluation to getting to better results in Your Honor's court?
That's a good question. Now, of course, I'm not there to do politics in my decisions, but my life, my legal training brings a different perspective, that when we conference and talk about cases, I'm hoping that I will be similar to what Justice Sotomayor said. My background gives input, gives meaning, puts things into context. And that's what I look at, and I will be heard. And I've always done that, even as a judge. It doesn't mean that I'm going to make law to shape because of my views, but I'm going to ensure that that law is applied to everyone fairly. And I believe most judges are trying to do that. But I also, just recently, and I'm not necessarily as an appellate justice, but I was asked to be on a task force that reevaluated the whole bail system in the state of California and give our report to our Chief Justice. And I started off with, bail is public safety. I've learned in this research and working, and the ultimate paper that we delivered to our Chief Justice is that bail is discrimination, and that only the very rich can afford it, but it doesn't ensure safety. So those are the things that even as an appellate justice, I can bring that type of open mind. Let's look at it, let's reevaluate, and it's not business as usual.
Well, this is a kind of a related question from our audience here. It is a very broad question, but it is the following. How do we address implicit bias in the judiciary? And I'll direct that to you and take it in whatever kind of direction you want. I know it's a very broad and all-consuming question.
Now, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. Are you talking about implicit bias by judges on people who come in, or implicit bias because of who I am as a judge? Because There's implicit bias. It's a two-way street. If you want me to give that one example of recently, before I was elevated to the appellate court, it was during the time I was a presiding judge. I was out in my courtroom. I was talking to my staff. My robe was not on. I was talking about the next morning's calendar, getting things ready. And this attorney walks in. And needless to say, he didn't look like me. His melon was a lot lighter than mine. And he immediately said, "Young lady," which I guess I should have been flattered, but wasn't. "Young lady, go fetch the judge." So that's implicit bias. That is clear implicit bias. I've had attorneys say to me on a motion, "Well, why you should handle it. Why bother a real judge?" So it can happen on a two-way street kind of thing. But as to those who come into our courtroom, this is why we need this discussion. This is why we need to look at our Constitution. This is why we need to look at our judicial or our legal system, that we have everybody at the table so we can fight this implicit bias. And this is why these questions, this dialogue that's going on, it's difficult for people. So often I hear when I talk about my experiences that people say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry." Well, sorry doesn't end it. So you're not off, you need to listen to it. "Oh, I'm sorry you're going through, I'm sorry that happened to you, and it makes me sad." That's what someone once said to me when I gave them an experience of what I go through. And I said, "You're sorry and it makes you sad. I have to live it." So we have more dialogue to talk about it and bring it to the head. I say this to my jurors: we all have our biases, but you better acknowledge it, bring it out in order for you to be able to make a decision. If you want to find for the plaintiff or find someone guilty or not guilty, get those biases out.
Well, the audience here is largely attorneys at large law firms. It is in-house counsel. It is, a fairly broad attorney audience. And I know you said earlier in your talk, you don't have all the answers, right? I mean, you're coming at it from a certain perspective. But if you had to convey a message or give, attorneys who are in the court system a message as to what they can do to reevaluate the Constitution, reevaluate the application of maybe some of these very old, dated, traditional, in a bad sense, foundations that we have. What would you relate to them? I mean, what would you relate to this audience here today?
Well, the fact that you have an audience here for OneJustice and all with OneJustice, that tells me there's a commitment, there's an openness. People are willing and ready to try to do things and make sure those who have been marginalized and don't have a voice have a voice. So that's right there, the first big step. Also bringing people in, having a discussion about these things, making sure that the more you talk about it, in my opinion, the more it comes to a head and you can avoid this implicit bias, that you shouldn't pigeonhole people, and that everyone culturally and ethnically, we have something to bring to this table and our legal system. So I think it's about talking, it's about participating, and it's doing what OneJustice is doing and having more OneJustice and making sure that this organization can continue its great work.
How has your perspective changed going from the Superior Court to the Appellate Court? What do you think you can do in this new role that maybe you weren't able to do in your prior role in the Superior Court?
Well, that's interesting. It's a different thing for appellate because we're there to review and to make sure that the law was applied fairly. It's more reading, more writing, which I enjoy. That's the intellectual or academic part of me. But Terry Jackson hasn't changed just because she has become an appellate justice. Terry Jackson is still the same Terry Jackson who has been invited, which I really appreciate OneJustice having me, but I'm always in the community and I shall continue to be in the community. I shall continue to say, if there's a wrong, I'm going to call that wrong out, and that everybody, as I said, should be treated fairly. So I don't know if that's going to change anymore than what I've already done as a judge to on the Court of Appeal from when I was an attorney, for that matter. The only difference is I'm not allowed to talk about my political views. I can't tell you who I vote for or who you should vote for. Those are the things that we're not allowed to do, or to comment on cases. But other than that, there's a lot that I continue to do. So does it give me a bigger platform? I think I already had a pretty big platform, and I'm going to use it as much as I can. And, you know, and hopefully I'll get more invitations, and I haven't bored anybody with my talk today.
I've got one last question for you. I'm told that I've got to wrap up with one last question. And the question is also a broad one. You know, we're in a moment here in this country. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of major change in racial politics. There's widespread protests from coast to coast. How has that changed your job in the judiciary? I mean, how have all of these major occurrences taking place changed how you approach the law and changed how you approach justice? What's your take on that?
They're exercising their First Amendment rights. You have that right. You have that right. And that's a part of the Constitution. The First Amendment, Second Amendment, all of them, they're all equal. So what is my take? You're exercising your First Amendment right, and that's about as much as I can say about that.
I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great place to end it right there. A celebration of all of the rights that folks have from coast to coast. So let me wrap it up here on behalf of OneJustice. Your Honor, I mean, this was so fun to listen to your talk. It was inspirational, and I hope it's kind of a call for change here among all of the folks across the OneJustice community. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let me transition now to hear from our great OneJustice staff.
Thank you so much for your generous support of Opening Doors for Justice. Your donations today will allow OneJustice to increase support for our nonprofit capacity building projects and strengthen the legal aid sector so that it can face the many challenges ahead.
Your donation of $250 will enable OneJustice to mobilize its network to advocate for legislation to support civil legal aid providers.
Your donation of $500 will allow OneJustice to operate its statewide listserv, enabling legal service providers throughout California to share best practices and lessons learned while navigating the COVID-19 pandemic.
$1,500 will allow OneJustice to plan a robust summer law training series for law students of legal aid programs across California.
Your donation of $1,500 will fund a domestic violence pro bono clinic toolkit that will enable replication across the state.
Your donation of $1,750 will allow OneJustice to fund one Executive Fellow Scholarship for the Fall 2020 class to ensure the pipeline of trained legal aid leaders with concrete nonprofit management skills.
$2,000 will enable OneJustice to gather the sector around election planning so that legal aid organizations can better prepare for each scenario.
$2,000 will enable OneJustice to update its pro bono best practices guide to account for best practices during COVID-19.
$2,000 will allow OneJustice to track and work on COVID-19 related policy that affects legal aid organizations in low-income communities.
$2,500 will allow OneJustice to develop and share resources to help our partners reach their equity, diversity, and inclusion goals.
$3,000 will allow OneJustice to create a measurable outcome study for a statewide unemployment insurance benefits pro bono project.
With your $5,000 donation, OneJustice will convene immigration legal services
providers serving the Central Coast to provide training on best practices under our new normal and facilitate collaboration on how to best serve dispersed communities.
With a $10,000 donation, OneJustice will deploy pro bono resources to assist jobless Californians to apply for unemployment aid.
Good evening. My name is Michael Tate, and I want to welcome you to what I hope will be an exceptionally fun part of the program. For the past 3 years, I've had the honor of serving as the MC and auctioneer for Opening Doors to Justice. Now, while our circumstances have changed and we're not together in person, I'm no less thrilled to be back with you as a friend and fan of OneJustice. I'm moved to share that in the midst of these unusual times, OneJustice has continued doing the critical work to ensure that some of our neediest communities have legal support and representation. So I know you're asking yourself, how can I participate? Well, hopefully you've watched the scroll on the screen since the beginning of the program, but I just want to remind you, you can send a text to 41444, and in the message line type ODJ 2020. You'll be sent a link to complete your donation. You can follow the prompt and you can choose to do a custom amount if you want. And you also have the ability to make your donation recurring. It's that simple. Just a reminder, you heard earlier from Cooley that one lucky donor tonight will be randomly selected to receive 2 round-trip tickets on United Airlines to anywhere in the United States. And of course, there's the wine pool where there are some amazing wines available for only $25 a bottle. All wine will be delivered to your door by a OneJustice board member. Social distancing happening. Again, simply text to 41444 and in the message line type ODJ 2020. Now, I'm delighted to introduce my partner for this evening, Sharon Bashan, Director of OneJustice's Pro Bono Justice Program. Sharon?
Hi, friends. This year's Fund a Need will allow OneJustice to increase support for our nonprofit capacity building projects in anticipation of the many challenges facing the legal aid sector in the year ahead. OneJustice works with over 100 amazing legal aid nonprofits throughout California. The funds raised from ODJ 2020 will help strengthen and transform this legal aid network by bringing them much needed technical support, pro bono training, cohort-based learning, and essential nonprofit management consulting and coaching by the OneJustice team. The funds raised from ODJ 2020 will go towards continuing the fight for justice through remote legal aid clinics and policy advocacy in order to tackle the solvable legal problems of families, veterans, immigrants, as well as those impacted by COVID-19. Our goal is to raise $500,000 to continue supporting immigrants, families, veterans, survivors of domestic violence, and workers, all those who are especially vulnerable during the COVID-19 pandemic. Can we raise $500,000 tonight? I really do think so, but we need your support today.
Thanks, Sharon. That was fantastic. And I'm right there with you. I'm delighted to tell you that we're already approaching $400,000 since we started our program. So I'm going to thank all of you in advance for your generosity. Now, we've tried to make this as easy as possible. We all know how to use our mobile phones. We have giving levels from $10,000 to $100, but don't be afraid to give more if you can. And if you can't even give 100, we want everyone to be able to participate. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first level is $10,000. Now, I know that's an audacious amount, but I want to let you know that $10,000 can allow OneJustice to partner with 3 legal aid nonprofits to design and implement virtual clinics to meet the heightened demand for services due to the pandemic. Sharon, maybe you could share a little bit more about those virtual clinics and how those really make an impact.
Sure, Michael. As you all know, OneJustice is known for its many clinics, including Justice Bus, Rural Justice, RJC, and Impact LA. We've had to pivot in this time of pandemic from our in-person clinics to virtual clinics. We know based on the legal aid organizations that we're talking to that many are struggling to do a similar pivot to these virtual clinics. We are taking all of our best practices, including what's worked, what hasn't worked, and we're continuously iterating because technology is changing every day, practices are changing, needs are changing. We want to share this with 3 legal aid nonprofits This is really a gift that will keep on giving. So a $10,000 investment really means that these nonprofits, even after COVID-19, can continuously serve its clients in a more accessible way. So this is not just an investment for today, but it's an investment in access to justice in the future.
Thanks, Sharon. That's fantastic to hear. I really appreciate you sharing that and talking about how that $10,000 gift can really amplify and touch so many people's lives. So I'm looking at my tote board coming up. This is technology, folks. You know, if I was in person, I'd be running around the room with the microphone. And I am thrilled to say that we already have our first gift, and it's from our good friends at the DLA Piper Foundation with the $10,000 gift. DLA Piper Foundation, as you know, are great friends of OneJustice, and I actually have a video that they'd like to share.
My name is Lisa Dewey, and I'm the U.S. Pro Bono Partner at DLA Piper. I also serve on the board of DLA Piper's foundation. The DLA Piper Foundation is happy to support OneJustice with a $10,000 grant to help it respond to the increased need for legal services as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. We know that it is critical to develop even more virtual clinics to help people during this time. We are proud to support OneJustice and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DLA Piper Foundation. Now, you know, I may be sitting in my living room and you may be in your dining room, but I'm going to raise the roof for DLA Piper Foundation. Thank you so much for your generosity. I'm going to keep on moving to our next level, but of course, you can give any amount at any time. And if the spirit moves you, feel free to give $10,000. Our next level is $5,000. And what that will do is allow OneJustice to convene immigration legal service providers serving the Central Coast to provide training on best practices in our new normal and facilitate collaboration on how best to serve dispersed communities. Sharon, I hear so much about the Central Coast and the need there. Maybe if you can share some more about your experiences there and how these gifts can really help that community.
Central Coast is what we would call a justice desert, meaning that there isn't a large legal aid presence there. There aren't a lot of private attorneys, let alone there's no large law firm there. Meaning that if you are a low-income person with a legal problem or even a few legal problems, you are less likely to get the assistance. OneJustice in the past has taken our justice plane and brought volunteers to the area. Immigration is one of the areas. At one point, I think I counted 3 or 4 immigration attorneys within a 200-mile radius. So these services just don't exist, yet the need is acute. This investment will really allow us to go into these areas, of course, right now virtually, to help folks that need immigration help. And right now, with this administration, we don't know what is going to come next. So it's especially imperative that folks in the Central Coast get these services and that we are able to best bring our pro bono attorneys and volunteers through this virtual model to help serve this need.
Thank you so much, Sharon. So I'm here to tell you whether it's the justice plane or the justice bus, and we know we're social distancing and that's not happening right now, but I think there's a new thing, the justice Zoom call or the justice Microsoft team meeting. OneJustice will go and meet the need wherever you are, and if it has to be virtual, that's fantastic. I'm looking at my tote board and I see my first gift is from OneJustice Board Chair Keely O. Thank you, Keely. You saw her earlier this evening. She was speaking, and that is an absolute delight to have that gift. And breaking news, folks. You know this happens when I show up at an auction. We've just had an anonymous donor reach out to the staff who then messaged me. And again, I always tell you, technology at work. This donor who wants to remain anonymous will match all gifts made going forward up to $5,000. That's right. So if you do the math, we can take $5,000 and make it $10,000. So I'm going to invite, is there anyone who wants to just hit it out of the park right now and turn $5,000 into $10,000? Maybe you're sitting with your partner or friend, socially distancing, of course, and you each want to do $2,500. If we get to that 5,000, that'll be matched. So is there anyone who wants to join at the $5,000 level with QLE to help us reach that match? Don't be afraid. I may not see you, but you can imagine me running around the room. And if we don't get it at this level, there are other levels. As long as we match that tonight, we'll go up to $5,000 in the match. So I'll keep my eye on the tote board, but I'm going to move on to our next level. I am delighted at the $2,500 level. And this is so critical during these times that we're living in. $2,500 will allow OneJustice to develop and share resources to help our partners reach their equity, diversity, and inclusion goals. With everything happening in the world right now, so much attention is being drawn on this. Sharon, if you could share some of your experiences with that and how you see that making an impact with OneJustice.
You're right, Michael, in that right now there's a lot of conversation around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But DEI is something that's important, not just right now, it's always important. And it's something that OneJustice is grappling with. We're having a lot of internal conversations. And I know that our sister legal aid organizations are having very similar conversations. This investment would really allow us to partner with more organizations, continue the dialogue, and make sure that we are all practicing what we preach, that our goals of social justice and all the work that we're doing externally is equally reflected in all of our practices internally, which really makes us better advocates.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to remind you all that we still have that anonymous donor for the match up to $5,000. So I'm going to make sure that you all know that. I will keep on sharing that and keep on reminding you of that. I'm delighted we actually have a gift at the $2,500 level, which is amazing, is Matt Werdiger. So thank you, Matt, for your generosity at that level.
Thank you, Matt.
I'm going to keep on going. Our next level is $1,500. And Sharon, you know, as I said when we chatted earlier, we're now starting to get into that venti, latte, passing that up kind of level. The Starbucks and Pete's are opening back up. So if you just gave one of these up a couple times a week, you could make that gift. Now, $1,500 can fund a domestic violence pro bono clinic toolkit that can be replicated across the state. The power of that replication is so important. Sharon, if you could share some information about that, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I started my, my legal aid career running a domestic violence program in the Bay Area. That was 15 years ago. Don't do the math on my age, please. But needless to say, domestic violence as a social problem has not gone away. In fact, right now with COVID-19, it's especially heightened as we are looking at many domestic violence victims that are stuck at home, sheltering at home with their abusers. A lot of organizations are struggling to know how to do this work safely. There are a lot of issues with confidentiality and how you have proper communications with your client or even reach out when it may cause a safety issue at home. At OneJustice, we're lucky enough to have our Impact LA project. That's a project here in LA that serves domestic violence survivors with wraparound services, helping with in areas of housing, immigration, public benefits, and family law to make sure that these domestic violence victims go from victims to survivors and can thrive. We're taking all of the lessons learned and putting it into toolkits so that other program providers can do this work across the state.
Fantastic. Oh, look at us. We've crossed over the $400,000 mark, and we had a very generous gift from Seth Levy at $2,500. Thank you, Seth. And also Edward Son at $1,500. We're going to pick up our pace here. We're just mindful of time and people in their evenings. The $1,000 level can allow OneJustice to continue its Central Coast partnerships, providing much needed legal aid to those areas. And I know Sharon has already touched on that. So I'm going to kick this right off, Sharon. I see Linda Kim at $1,000. Thank you, Linda. I see Sally Carlson also at $1,000. And Ben Adams, who we saw earlier in the program, also at $1,000. Again, those Central Coast partnerships really make a difference. So just keep on going. I think we've actually made our match, which is fantastic, releasing those funds. I'm going to move on to $500. I am seeing $500 will allow OneJustice to operate statewide listservs, enabling legal services providers throughout the state of California to share their best practices and lessons learned while navigating the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, right off the bat, I see Toby Rothschild and Ellen LaPointe at the $500 level. Maybe Sharon, if you could touch a little bit on that, the power of that listserv, just briefly as we are kind of winding down here.
Yeah, so at OneJustice, I think we've been a barometer for all things COVID-19 related. We've been convening the sector, that's over 100 legal aid organizations, surveying, sharing information, convening, and then really taking the needs that we're seeing and sharing that out so that organizations are better able to weather the storm, can better adjust to serving their clients, and can navigate this new world that we're dealing with.
Wow, that's so important. Folks, we're winding down and we're at the $100 level. And as I said earlier, we want to make sure that everyone, even in these times where you're being asked to support a lot of different organizations, I know you all are believers in the power of OneJustice and what their commitment to. $100, that will allow OneJustice to continue supporting its nonprofit partners' organizational resilience in the face of COVID-19. Helping with the distribution of toolkits designed to help legal service organizations ensure their best practices. So I'm already gonna just power through these, Sharon. I see Benjamin Adams at $100. I see Amanda Irish at $100. I see Matthew Werdiger at $100. And I know, I don't wanna mess up Jennifer's name. It's a beautiful, it's Jennifer Chalamantriana. I think I was close to that. Thank you, Jennifer. And hopping back up, Tamika Butler at $500. Thank you so much, Tamika. And then we have some other amounts just coming in. Our good friend Julia Wilson at $550. Sally Kay at $250. Our friend Jonathan Downing, thank you, Jonathan, at $350. And David Lash at $180. And just friends who are coming in right and left, Tom Kintner, 7x7 Consulting, James Lindfeld, Stephen Downey, Rebecca Lazarus, Kimberly Irish Heinonen, and Gail Kwan, all donors at Opening Doors to OneJustice. My friends, we have reached the latter part of our evening. I know you have things to do, time to spend with your family, but I want to thank you for spending time with us this evening. Your generosity, whether you're watching the program in real time or whether you're participating later watching the recording, we thank you for your generosity and joining us to help at Opening Doors.
Thank you so much, everyone.
On behalf of all of us at OneJustice, thank you so much for your support of Opening Doors to Justice. We could not do our work without you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.